Welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show, where trusted leaders bring biblical insights to important issues to help you stand for truth and effect godly change in our nation and in our world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show. What would have happened if everyone had ignored Paul Revere? You remember Paul Revere, Paul Revere's midnight ride, as he rode up and down the road to Boston saying, "The British are coming, the British are coming." And Minutemen rallied to the cause and fought against the British regiment that marched to Concord to seize American munitions. This was the beginning of the American Revolution, a war that actually set not only America free from tyranny, but enabled us to establish the Constitution that became the model for freedom around the world and now is the longest lasting constitution in the history of the world. But I repeat my question, what would have happened if everyone had ignored him? I raise this question because today we have a lot of Paul Reveres who are warning us, not about the British, but actually about an enemy that is far older, and that is Islam. Islam is at war with the entire Western world and has been at war with the United States ever since we were founded. We fought the Muslims off the coast of North Africa when Thomas Jefferson was president. You might have heard of the Barbary pirates, right? These were not just pirates like we think of pirates. These were Muslims. And they were attacking American and European ships, and they were forcing our sailors to become slaves, Muslim slaves, who they would release only if ransom were paid. See, so this is nothing new. That's where the phrase, the shores of Tripoli, came from in the Marine Corps hymn, by the way. In recent elections this year, we saw Muslims make major gains in elected positions across the country. Most famously, Zoran Mamdani, not only a Muslim, but an avowed socialist, and in fact, I believe a communist, won the mayoral race in New York City. Mamdani believes that Israel is guilty of genocide, demands that they relinquish quote-unquote occupied territory. He participated in a pro-Hamas rally and threatens to have Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, arrested if he travels to New York. Well, this is outrageous. The United Nations is located in New York City. So if Mamdani is right, then no foreign leader could ever come to the United Nations without some danger of being arrested. Mamdani condemns the United States' attack on Iranian nuclear facilities. Why am I going into detail here about Zoran Mamdani? Because he's a Muslim, folks, right? Because he's a Muslim. And in America today, we have to wake up to the reality of the threat that is posed against our country, not just America, but the entire West, by this thing called Islam. You see, Islam is not just a religion like you and I think of a religion. It's an entire system of life. And it has been spread since its foundation, right? In the 7th century, it has spread across the world, not through peaceful persuasion like Christianity, right? No, it's been spread through force, domination, subversion, and deceit. At the edge of a sword, literally. You know, we had a Muslim from Afghanistan recently shoot 2 National Guard soldiers in Washington, D.C. in cold blood. Muslims have attacked United States law enforcement and military personnel for a long time. Like, for example, 2023, a Syrian Muslim shot 3 police officers in Fargo, North Dakota. Earlier this year, in 2025, in Fairfax, Virginia, a Muslim shot 2 officers at a traffic stop. Do you remember the attack on soldiers at Fort Hood? A United States Army member who was a Muslim, shot up fellow soldiers. The Muslim mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, recently told a Christian pastor who came to voice his opinion at a city council meeting that he was not welcome at that city council meeting. Regular anti-American rhetoric spews out of the mouths of Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, 2 Muslim members of Congress. Now, massive corruption has been uncovered in Minneapolis, Minnesota, committed by who? By the Muslim Somali population regarding fraudulent claims for Medicaid and welfare benefits and other things related to COVID. So folks, I'm saying this today, that America, it's the 11th hour, all right? We need to wake up. The Muslim population in our nation is growing by leaps and bounds. thanks in no small measure to Joe Biden's open border policy, but it's growing by leaps and bounds also because of their birth rate that far exceeds our own. And they're beginning to take over major metropolitan areas like Minneapolis and Dearborn. Recently, I was in Dallas, Texas. I couldn't believe at the airport and even at a sort of an affluent area where I had to go to a conference, how many Muslims walking around in burqas and jihad and the other Muslim garb and this kind of thing. It was extremely noticeable. You folks, Islam is not just a religion, it's a complete way of life. It is political, it is cultural, and it is religious. Every Muslim, to be a Muslim, you must agree that you will participate in jihad. This is a fundamental tenet of their belief system. It's not some optional thing, right? And what is jihad? It is the quest to subvert and force the entire world into submission to Allah. Now, Sharia, what is Sharia? It's Islamic law, right? To say Sharia law is redundant. Sharia is Muslim law. Sharia is the supreme law for every Muslim. Every Muslim is duty-bound to not only follow Sharia, but to impose it everywhere in the world, regardless of the United States Constitution. So Muslims in Europe have invaded and are taking over the entire nation of Great Britain today. They create no-go zones around local mosques. You see, we think of mosques like, it must be a Muslim church. No, it's more akin to taking a church, combining it into a city hall and police station and National Guard depot. That's what a mosque is, where they can, from that place, they can exert control and influence to the area. It's like the mafia moves into town. They're erecting massive new mosques in Dallas, Texas today. Virtually controlled Dearborn and Minneapolis, I mentioned. In New York City, I recently read a headline that there are so many new mosques being built that they have this growing influence. The call to prayer goes out over the loudspeakers, blasting out, which normally would be a violation of city ordinances regarding disturbing the peace. And yet the government of New York City is so intimidated by the Muslims that they won't do anything about it. They have 2 to 5 times as many children as everyday Americans do, and their population is only going to increase. Now, I may seem like an alarmist, and I may sound like a xenophobe and a bigot, but guys, my point that I'm making today is that Islam, it's not the same. It's not a matter of race. It's not a matter of, oh, you're being discriminatory. No, I'm asking the question. You have American values and Americanism. You have the principles of this great nation that we were built on and that we were founded on. And then you have Islam. Islam is diametrically opposed to the principles of the Declaration of Independence. They have no concept and there is no way for them to embrace the idea that men are created equal. All men, all people are created equal. No, that is not true under Islam. The idea that all people have been given unalienable rights, that the government is instituted to defend those rights, nonsense to the Muslim. No, you aren't given rights. You're a slave to Allah. And the purpose of government is to work hand in hand with Islam, to be an instrument of Islam, to subvert not only your nation, but every other nation to Islam. This is extremely serious. Muslims bring in different standards than we do for things like public cleanliness, order, aesthetics. Islam brings in corruption, the oppression of women, and other things. I'm not making this stuff up. Just look at the Muslim world and how they operate. Under Islamic thinking, all of life is jihad, and jihad involves immigration, right? Immigration into non-Muslim nations under the banner of so-called peace is a jihadi strategy. It's been followed ever since Muhammad subversively invaded Medina from Mecca and ended up, when their numbers became sufficient in Medina, they took the city over by force, right? So this is not racism, it's reality. If we ignore it because all religions are supposedly equal, or if we ignore it because we're not supposed to think that people from other countries are unworthy of being here, or we ignore it for some other feel-good, new age, woke ideology, what we're doing is we're allowing a deadly disease to infect our body politic. And this deadly disease, we will not recover from it, right? How many of you would knowingly allow yourself to be infected with a deadly disease? Right? But that is exactly what we're doing. That's what Europe has done. And just look at England, look at France, look at Belgium, look at Germany, look at Switzerland, look at these countries as they are turning into Muslim strongholds before our very eyes, and it's probably too late for them there. They don't have the power to stop it. Are we going to allow this to happen in America? Or are we going to sound the alarm? Are we going to say, I don't care whether you approve of me or not, but I'm going to speak the truth. We cannot allow unlimited Islamic immigration into this country. We must eradicate Muslims from positions of influence in this nation, particularly reflecting where they have access to national security, law enforcement, foreign policy, and things of this nature. We just can't allow it, folks, right? It's suicide. It's national suicide. Here with me today, joining me on set, John Guandolo. John is the founder of an organization that is dedicated to providing strategic and operational threat-focused consultation, education, and training for federal, state, and local leadership and agencies, and designing strategies at all levels of the community to equip people to defeat this jihadi threat.
America needs Christians of steadfast faith to stand up and boldly proclaim the promises of God. Faith for America by Richard Harris shows how the prayers and steadfast faith of ordinary believers can carry a nation through its darkest hours. Now is the time to stand firm, pray boldly, and keep fighting for freedom, trusting God to bring light from tragedy. Order your copy today. Most conservative voters want to make a difference, but don't know where to start. There's too much information and not enough direction. That's where the Truth and Liberty Resource Center comes in. It's your one-stop shop for biblical action, with a searchable library of tools, training, and expert insights to help you influence culture with truth. From voter guides to news articles, every resource is hand-selected to equip you for impact. Find your tools, fight for truth.
It can be tough being a pastor in a world that seems to have gone mad, where the wolves wear suits and laws try to silence the pulpit. But you're not alone. That's why we created the Pastor's Toolkit, trusted, ready-made resources to help your church engage biblically in public life. Equip your congregation, transform your community, be salt and light. Visit truthandliberty.net.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Truth and Liberty Show. You know, here on Truth and Liberty, what I try to do is to bring to you analysis and information on the most important issues of our day. And I know that every so often we need to talk about the subject of Islam, Islamization, terrorism, and these kinds of things. And some people may be like, well, why do you keep talking about all this? And what I would say to you today, and I'm just taking a little moment here to get on a soapbox, is if you look at the headlines, then you would know the answer to that. Look at what's happening in Europe today. Look at France, look at England, look at Belgium, look at Germany, as Muslims are literally taking over these formerly Christian nations and converting them into Muslim strongholds. And the same thing is happening in America, and it's time for us to wake up about it. And that's why I have my good friend, a special guest today, John Guandolo, joining us. John, thanks for coming on Truth and Liberty.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we've known each other for a while now. You've been teaching in our practical government school for probably 10 years now.
Almost, yeah.
And it's amazing. But John, this subject of, jihad, Islamic terror, the Muslim conquest of the West. This is an obvious answer, but since you started teaching in our school 10 years ago compared to today, how much further along is jihad in America?
That's a great first question. I would say this. For the last 10 years, the situation has grown worse each year, worse by the month, really. And today, it's worse today than it was under Mr. Biden and under Mr. Obama. And the reason I say that is because you still have people inside the senior levels of government who are advising the president, advising the national security folks inside the White House. But most importantly, because if you just look at the outcome the decisions that are being made, the comments that are coming out of the White House, and the actions that are being taken, we can see that the bad guys are not only in charge, they're more in charge today than they've ever been.
Well, let's just kind of talk about sort of a big issue first, which is, we're not supposed to be bigoted. We're not supposed to stereotype people or assume things. But if someone says, I am a Muslim, that means something, doesn't it? And does it mean something about what that person believes and about their worldview?
Of course. I mean, in Islam, I just always start with a couple questions. First of all, what does Islam say the purpose of Islam is? And that's the question. And I think the answer is telling, because the purpose of Islam, which they teach children in Islamic schools all across the country, including in the United States, that the purpose of Islam, the singular purpose, is to wage jihad, war, against non-Muslims to establish a global Islamic state under Allah's divine law, Sharia. Period. That's it. So if a person says, I am someone who subscribes to that, that tells me a lot, and it tells me that you are a threat to me and my family, my community, and my nation.
Well, so is it true that Muslims, to be a Muslim, means that you are duty-bound to carry out jihad?
Yes. It's a quoting Allah's divine law, Sharia. Jihad is obligatory for everyone in the Muslim community. Now, under certain circumstances, not everyone is required. And under certain circumstances, you're required to immediately go join the jihad. So it depends, where is the jihad at the time? Are you within the battle lines or not within the battle lines? Is there a caliphate established and a caliph? And if the caliph calls all Muslims to the jihad, they're required to go. So it depends on, the law specifically breaks it down. Mm-hmm. So real quick, one example. If non-Muslims are waging war and are even present in Muslim lands, like American troops in Saudi Arabia before Operation Desert Storm, when Osama bin Laden quoted Islamic law, he was accurately quoting Islamic law. It's a duty of all Muslims to pick up weapons and go attack the American troops. That's normative Islamic law. Mm-hmm. There's no other version of it. That's just it.
Well, there is, though, strategically speaking, for jihad, there's subversive jihad before there's violent jihad, typically speaking, right?
Okay.
So now you were talking about a Muslim nation. That's a little bit different. But here in America, people are here and they're like, well, I'm just a Muslim and I'm just living my life. And you're saying I'm a jihadi. That's not true. You're Islamophobic.
Okay. So this is you're hitting a lot of the really important points. Let me say this. There are people who self-identify as Muslim, who don't want to wage jihad, and they don't want to, they don't hate America, or they don't hate Europe or whatever. That's fine. But that doesn't constitute a different version of Islam. Under Islamic law, they're apostates and should be killed. Mm. Now, they could be lying, but that's not up to me. I'm not going to sit here and walk around a room full of Muslims, and I'm not the Sharia police. That's what they do. I'm saying that's what Islam is, and that's the requirement. And there is no other. And the way that the enemy is winning across the Western world is because for decades now, we have had stupid, incompetent, and criminally negligent and treasonous leaders who have run the country, who have run places like France, Germany, England. And they're not all just traitors, like they're intentionally doing it. But they're all criminally negligent because they're supposed to know this. What we're talking about, they're required, certainly in the United States, under our Constitution and our laws. I mean, we put doctors and lawyers in jail for when unprofessional conduct kills a person. And we have many Americans dead prior to and since 9/11.
Well, I think Washington, D.C. would have a drastic reduction in population if we applied that to government. But
that's right.
So recent headlines, Zoran Mamdani captured headlines every day. Now he's the new mayor of New York City. Mm-hmm. We have a Muslim and a communist, both combined, leading the financial center not just of America but of the world. How in the world did we get here?
We're talking about it because, number one, America decided prior to, but also I would say during the Clinton administration, which was already heavily penetrated. I mean, Abdurrahman al-Amoudi was the largest financier for al-Qaeda, largest fundraiser for al-Qaeda in North America. And he was the Islamic advisor to President Clinton for 2 terms. So what does that tell you about vetting at the Secret Service and FBI? What does that tell us about, I mean, we've done it before on the show, gone through some of these people that have been in positions of great influence. But since that time, what we're witnessing now, Mamdani's election, that's the intentional outcome of 60 years of the Muslim Brotherhood Islamic movement in the United States. So all of their influence on pastors, on state legislators, on local and state police forces, on the FBI, CIA, DHS, where we've got, I mean, again, jihadis not only working, training, shutting down truthful discussion about these issues because it's Islamophobic, it's offensive to Muslims, right? That's now been going on for 24 years at the national, it's been going on longer, but since 9/11. And this is how this happens, is the American people, when they hear Republicans and Democrats at the national level, people they trust at the state level, their pastors saying, one God, 3 Abrahamic faiths. These guys that did 9/11, they're just radicals. They're not real Muslims.
Yeah.
And that's pounded into 2 generations of Americans. And so they've been literally pushed into catastrophic ignorance about Islam.
Yeah, and comment on this. I can't prove it, but I just, life teaches you these things. How do these people, like, I can't say the Muslim, no, the Arabic name, but the guy that was the largest financier for al-Qaeda, how does someone like that get to that level of influence? Is there a lot of money that is lining the pockets of American public officials that originates in these Muslim countries?
Yes. So the first simple answer, yes. But the key is when they go to these folks, if I could share one thing with all the viewers, it's this. This entire war is much more a war of counterintelligence, espionage, subversion, than it is merely
drone
violence.
strikes.
Right. This is the key. So they go in wearing suits. They meet with state legislators. They meet with secretaries of state. They meet with members of Congress. And over years, which they've been doing it for so long now, they're elevated. Really, in the Clinton administration is the first time we see it, where they're elevated to the national security level, the White House. They're welcomed into the White House. And when I say they, I'm talking about jihadis, suit-wearing jihadis. And one thing about what we were talking about jihad before, jihad is total warfare, right? It's subversion, it's propaganda, it's nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare, it's conventional warfare, it's espionage, it's all of it. So when we, like for the purpose of the discussion, we talk about like violent jihad and the nonviolent subversion, espionage, but it's all part of jihad.
Yeah.
Jihad, just like the Chinese see warfare as, from the political warfare standpoint, it's total war, so does the global Islamic movement.
So Mamdani's election, though, he was not the only Muslim elected in America.
No.
In November. There were 42 Muslims elected across the country based on my research, and bringing the total number of Muslims holding public office in this country into the hundreds now.
Right.
And we've got 4 active professing Muslims in the United States House of Representatives alone. Looking across the pond, we've got a Muslim mayor of London. We've got Muslims all through the parliament in England and Muslims in leadership in France and in other countries. No-go zones, The police won't even touch them. You can't speak against the Quran in public or you'll go to jail.
That's right.
And I saw a report the other day that even in New York City, they're building mosques. They're blasting out the call to prayer, which violates zoning ordinances and disturbing the peace and these regulations that apply to everybody else, but they're not going to touch the Muslims for it. How far are we behind Europe? Is it one step, two steps, quite a ways, or are we just nipping at their heels as far as this whole Islamization of our nation?
Well, I would say that the Islamic movement's tactics in Europe are a little different, but much closer there than anywhere else to the United States, to what they're doing here. They recognize geographically we are huge, and so they're focused on the power centers, which is what they're doing in Europe. I don't mean to say that, but they're also, and we've seen it in Michigan, we've seen it in Indiana, we've seen it in Pennsylvania, almost all states, but I'm thinking of the key ones. We've seen it in Minnesota, we're seeing it in Texas a lot, where they're going out into the middle of nowhere and buying up land. And this is all strategic. When they build mosques, they look at priority is building a mosque near something that they can then, because the purpose of a mosque, we can talk about that, but it's not a Muslim church, right? It's a place to it's the outpost of the Islamic State. And it's the place from which they wage jihad, from which they launch jihad. So you'll see them around the United States, across the street from National Guard armories, I just think of the work that I did in Virginia, buying up property next to property they know is owned by the CIA, buying up, and they're going around. And I did a report on this about 9 years ago. If you look at the top 10 cities in America, and in those cities, the top 5 hotels, every one of them's got a manager or assistant manager that's Muslim. Now, the statistical probability of that is 0, that would happen randomly. So it's intentional. All these things, the things you're asking about, these are all intentional, and it's because they're actually waging a war and preparing for a wide-scale kinetic war here.
It seems like that, and I know you'll agree with this, but it seems like that we are continuing to look at this problem through Western lenses. In other words, like we think, a mosque, that must be like a church, right?
Right.
Or, okay, they're going to come to America, they're going to swear their allegiance and be good American citizens, just like all the European immigrants eventually became good American citizens, except for the mafia and stuff like that. But otherwise, so we're not going to be biased against them and all, but it's really not that way, is it? We can't look at Islam and jihad through Western lenses, or we'll be completely defeated.
Yes. Again, short answer is yes. The reason we're losing is because you have to understand this enemy, and only this way, through the lens of Sharia. So one of the things I frequently talk about is you have to use words that our leaders use, that they use, but to understand what the Muslim community, what the Muslim leadership means, you have to translate English to English through the filter of Sharia. So, you asked before about when we talk about how they wage war and the subversive jihad and all that, and the purpose of Islam. Islam breaks the whole world into 2 parts, the house of war and the house of Islam. House of Islam, where Sharia is the law of the land, everywhere else the house of war. The purpose of Islam is to eliminate the house of war until the entire world is under the house of Islam and Sharia, and then you have peace.
Wow.
So when they say, and the vehicle to do that, of course, is jihad, and when they say we're a religion of peace, well, they actually mean that, but not the kind of peace that you and I understand. It's the peace where all humans and the whole earth is submitted to Allah's divine law, Sharia.
It's peace that only exists after you submit.
Correct, or are killed.
Or killed, yeah.
Right. If you think about the word terrorism, terrorism in Islam is to kill a Muslim without right under Sharia. So Sharia says Muslims can be killed for certain reasons. If they leave Islam, they can be killed. If they commit adultery, they can be killed. And there are a few other reasons. If they're homosexual, they can be killed. If they kill a Muslim without right under Sharia, they can be killed. But that's about it. So non-Muslims who kill Muslims for really any reason are terrorists. So when Al-Qaeda Osama bin Laden and his followers and Islamic State and Hezbollah and Hamas, when they call Americans terrorists, they're telling you.
Yeah.
But we're just like, oh, they're all crazy. Well, they're following Sharia.
Yeah.
If you want to know, when we see these images on TV of these children in a mosque, like at the Muslim American Society, a Muslim Brotherhood organization, at their mosque, and children singing about cutting the heads off of the infidels and being a part of Muhammad's army to kill and capture the enemy for all of Islam. And of course, people are, for 10 seconds, are appalled and can't imagine. Why would they teach that there? And the interviews I did when this all came out, just one, this goes on all the time. My answer is like, what is it you think they're teaching in a mosque? That's normative Islamic doctrine. Why wouldn't they teach that to children? It's a capital crime in Islam for Muslims to teach other Muslims anything about Islam that's not real Islam. So I would expect them to teach that. Just because you're too stupid as a non-Muslim to know that that's what that is, that's not their problem. And go back to your question, that's why we're losing.
Yeah.
Because if we go back to, the whole idea, gentle as doves, but also wise as serpents.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people in America that are not only gentle as doves, have the intellectual capacity of doves. and that's where we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of saying, Islam's evil, it's barbaric. No, just pick up a textbook for 7th grade children in U.S. Islamic schools and peruse it. And then ask yourself, what is that teaching that Al-Qaeda teaches? Is there any difference?
Yeah.
And the answer is no.
Mm-hmm. Well, John, I mean, Donald Trump, he's America first, has done amazing stuff already to defend the country and all these other sorts of things. He ordered the strike on Iranian nuclear facilities. He's stood up for Israel to a certain degree and done all these great things. And yet you have concerns about him because he is, for example, had Zoran Mamdani to the White House in the Oval Office with him, buddying up with him, shaking hands, looking like they're good pals. What's going on?
Okay, so there are a couple things I think going on here. I've read the book Art of the Deal. Technically, I didn't read it. I listened to it on audio, but I'm familiar with the topic. So I get that that's kind of his style. He thinks, but he's bringing it into a realm where that does not work and will not work.
Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Because Islam has one purpose, and Mamdani, just like the leadership of Qatar, just like the leadership of Saudi Arabia, the leadership of Turkey, he called Erdogan a good guy, looking forward to doing military operations. I mean, this is crazy. This is, of the 4 nations on the earth that are leading nation states, leading the global Islamic movement, the global jihad: Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey. Mm-hmm. And he's bombing Iran while selling weaponry and military arms to the other 3, thinking they're on our side, Iran's not. That's the level of deception that they're running circles around him. And it's because, in my professional opinion, Mr. Trump has people that are including his intelligence communities, that's the right way, right? The State Department, to broker real political advantage. And that, if you just look at it, not only through the lens of Sharia, but the lens of reality, mm-hmm. that Qatar has for decades supported Al-Qaeda and Hamas, housed their leaders, given them safe haven, continues to do so today. And we think can somehow be an ally.
Yeah, because they want to do business with us, mm-hmm. right? Well, one of the things...
To gain money for the global jihad, by the way.
One of the things that he's done that, to me, I just couldn't get my head around was how he has supported, recognized, and embraced the new government in Syria. So Syria, used to be led by, dictator Assad, the family there. He got toppled, though, in a revolution. And it's not just like the American Revolution. These are not freedom-loving patriots. These are Muslim fanatics. And the head is a former head of Al-Qaeda, right? Who attacked Americans. I haven't seen one bit of evidence that he had some kind of miraculous change of heart or anything like that. And yet Trump is treating him like he's a legitimate head of state. What's going on?
I'd say if there's anything that's been a kick in the face to combat veterans and people that have served in the intelligence community for the last 20 plus years, I don't think Mr. Trump could have crapped on them any worse than that. I mean, that was disgusting. I hope that wasn't his intention, but he has to know that's what he did. This is a guy that was responsible for killing American troops, Marines, soldiers, a guy who is still, because we do it. You said I haven't seen any evidence that he changed, but we do have evidence that he hasn't. He was asked in an interview, what was the general feeling in the Islamic world about 9/11? And he said, if anybody said they weren't happy about it, they're not telling you the truth. So he's still kicking us in the face. I mean, I got to tell you, it's enraging. The level of criminal negligence by our leaders, including Mr. Trump. I'm sorry. He's got Hamas guys working in his administration. He's got Rabil Chowdhury. He's got a convicted terrorist on the Commission for U.S. Religious Liberty. Randall Royer, one of the Muslim Brotherhood's senior Islamic scholars, Yusuf Hamza. I mean, it is a joke. I mean, they are running circles around us. And, this is the thing. You either speak truth and we deal with this or we don't. So I want to go back to your question. Like the what's going on part is we lost in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and the areas in Africa we were engaged after 9/11. Why did we lose? Because we did not understand the enemy and did not understand the war in which we were engaged. 95% of this war is being fought in the nonviolent realm. It's espionage, counterintelligence, influence operation, subversion.
Wow.
And so while we were still engaged in, for instance, Afghanistan and Iraq, our State Department, the U.S. State Department, wrote the constitutions that became the constitutions for Afghanistan and Iraq, which created nations under which the law, the basis for the law, was Sharia.
Wow.
Which was Al-Qaeda's objective. And yet we stayed in those countries for another 12, 13 years, letting Americans die and this is how bad it is. We lost the war the moment those constitutions became relevant in each of those countries. But we were so incoherent. Our generals, our presidents, our national security advisors, and everyone else involved, so incoherently stupid and criminally negligent that we allowed troops to keep fighting over there.
Amazing. Is it stupid, criminal, or is it just incredibly naive? I mean,
it's all the above. Different people are. There are some people that are traitors that are actually intentionally doing it. There are people inside the government that I know because Steve Coughlin and I were the first two in the government to start briefing this. Back in 2000, for me, 2002 and 3, and for him, 2004 and 5 at the Pentagon, me and the Bureau. And then, we got put together working in the Department of Defense. But the lack of understanding of our leaders, I think Americans, when I brief law enforcement, and I just show them, like, here are the people we briefed. And I've never briefed anybody in a position like chairman of the Intelligence Committee, chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, former FBI, CIA directors that looked at me and said, oh yeah, I knew that. It was always the same response. Their jaws on the table and they're asking, how did I not know this?
Well, so one of Trump's big issues, of course, John, is immigration and deportation of millions of people now. It's amazing what's being accomplished there. But how much infiltration has America suffered by jihadis because of Barack and Joe Biden's open borders?
That's been significant. We know even from moderate estimates, we're talking about millions and millions of people. Some of the estimates are over 15 million. Some are higher. I mean, even on
Wait, now, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I thought the total illegal immigrant population was like 15 million. So how many of them are Muslims?
Oh, just the Muslims?
Yes.
So we don't know. This is the problem.
Okay.
But we know some of the ones that were stopped and some of the ones that were turned around, which unfortunately under the last administration was not many, are from very hostile countries. I mean, not just. Well, and before I say that, when we're talking countries like Yemen and Iran and Pakistan and others, but again, UAE and Egypt, you ask the average American, they think those are just moderate countries. These are countries that are aligned. You've got in the Muslim world, you've got Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, aligned against Qatar, Iran, and Turkey. But those conflicts have nothing to do with us. Mm-hmm. When Muslim entities or Muslim nations are in conflict, it's always about issues of power or Sharia. That's it. But you bring up a much bigger point that I think is worth mentioning. When we talk about these issues, the weapons deals with Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the border, and Mamdani, the fraudulent elections, although I think, we have no idea right now, but I think he was elected. I don't know if there was any fraud in that election, is what I'm saying. But if we fix these issues, that doesn't solve the problem. And if there's the one gold nugget I would love to leave with your audience, is that no war in human history has ever been won by fixing issues or changing policies. Wars are won by identifying and vanquishing enemies.
How do you do that with an enemy that, literally consists of 30% of the world?
Well, I don't know if they can constitute that big a population, but let's go with that for a second.
20%.
Let's go with that. You still have to vanquish them. Mm-hmm. And now, we look at history and some of the brutality that was done by Western nations against the Muslim forces, which was minimal compared to the brutality that was done towards the Western nations, if you actually want to look at historical reality. Or you can read a high school textbook, which is fiction, and get a different story. But the reality is, what is going to be necessary to win this war is going to have to be very brutal. Because, again, what's the lens? The defeat mechanism, if we use Sharia as the lens, Muslims are required to wage jihad when they have the ability and the resources to do so. And now, more than at any other time, probably in world history, that is true. And so how do you turn it around? I'll just say this. On 9/11, we know that Iran was directly involved in 9/11. They ran dry runs. Their intelligence operatives were directly supporting 9/11 hijackers in the United States. They supported al-Qaeda in Iran. We know that Saudi Arabia was directly involved at the government level. So we know that their Prince Bandar passed money to Omar Bayoumi as Saudi intelligence officers running. I just said Iran, I meant Saudi Arabia, running the hijackers. But we know those two nations. So if on 9/12/01, we had leveled Mecca and we had destroyed most of Iran's military capacity and taken their leadership out, and we had indicted the top 30 Islamic organizations in the United States because we have the evidence to determine they're part of an organized Muslim Brotherhood effort to overthrow the U.S. government, and we had executed their leaders, the jihad on the globe would have stopped right there.
Wow.
But when you say those kinds of things, people are like, oh my, okay. So if you don't mind seeing your children slain,
well, because we were
or surrendering your freedom, then then.
Well, John, 9/11? You remember it, I remember it. But how long was it after 9/11 when we were already being told these were just extremists? It was the same day.
Same day,
right?
Yep.
So how can you justify a worldwide war if these are just radicals?
Well, you can't.
No,
and that's why we never actually did it.
Question. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They intentionally embroiled us on the ground to, what did we do? We lost good men and women. We lost lots of money out of the treasury. We had an ongoing propaganda campaign against the American citizenry that it's not Islam, right?
Yeah.
There's Islam, as Kanta Ahmed says on Fox News. She's a suit-wearing jihadi turd. And she says, oh, there's Islam. That's just me practicing. Like today I'm fasting. And then there's Islamism, the violent stuff that Al-Qaeda. There's Sharia, the rocks and the trees and the spirituality. And then there's Sharia law, this archaic thing.
But she's just lying through her teeth.
Because that's her role.
Yeah.
The Kanda Ahmeds, the Raheel Razas, the Zuhdi Jassers of the world, their goal is to keep you, I say we're going to the shooting range, hit the bullseye, and you tell me, John, there's no target. Exactly. So long as you think there are competing versions of Islam, you will never deal with the actual problem. Right after 9/11, the President of the United States stood before Congress, a joint session, and he said what you just said, right?
It's a religion of peace.
It's good. Its teachings are good and peaceful. That's a flat out lie. And here's my question for anyone that wants to disagree. This isn't me saying it. I'm saying it here to you, but name one book of Islamic law that's ever been published in human history. One textbook used to teach 10-year-olds in U.S. Islamic schools that says that the purpose of Islam is anything except waging war against non-Muslims to impose Sharia on the earth.
Yeah. Well, so go back to Donald Trump for just a minute. We had there have been a series of violent acts by Muslims recently, a sort of small-scale terrorism, if you will. But 2 National Guard members were shot point blank, by this guy. Jihadi from Afghanistan, who the news reports say he helped U.S. forces in Afghanistan, and so he was allowed to immigrate here and so forth. But Trump announced a travel ban or an immigration ban on 12 nations in June, and now has expanded that to 30. Many of them are Muslim nations, or predominantly Muslim. Most of them are. Is that a good move? Do we need to just make it a worldwide thing, or what do you think about that whole immigration ban?
Yeah. So this is it. We could have a deep discussion just on this. And I'll start with saying this. When we talk about halting all immigration or halting all immigration from certain parts of the world, the foundation of our law and government is, right, the law of nature, and the law of nature's God, legally defined at the time of the founding. Natural law, the will of God as he reveals himself, and Holy Scripture. That's the foundation of the law, per the founders and per Blackstone's commentaries, which was the law the founders used at the time. That's the legal definition. So if we take natural law as Americans, now I believe we've already done this and thrown it out the window.
Yes, we have, but still, it's a good conversation to have.
But so can I tell someone, hey, because you're from this country and your father is dying and he lives in Arizona, you can't come here? Am I denying his natural right to be with his father?
My view of that would be no. Your father lives here doesn't mean that we as a sovereign nation have to let you visit your father.
We don't have to, but where does that fall into natural law? And here's all I'm saying. You and I can have the discussion. I'm saying at the governmental level, that's not even entered into the...
Oh, no.
That's not even on the table.
Well, they don't even know what natural law is.
And therein lies... This is the root of our... The problem... See, people ask me, what's the greatest threat to the country? I don't think it's the jihadis. Jihadis are doing what jihadis do. The communists are doing what communists do. Republicans are supposed to be the leaders of the party of Lincoln. And they're the defenders of the republic, the defenders of liberty. They're the greatest threat because they don't know natural law. They don't know the founding principles, and they're not defending them. But maybe that's a bigger discussion for later. What I'm saying is I think it's a good step that he's taking.
Yep. Okay.
But again, what about the massive jihadi movement in the United States?
Yeah,
nobody's done anything about that.
And what about the fact that we now have major cities ruled by Muslims in America, Dearborn, Minneapolis. How long until Dallas or some of these other cities? I mean, I just flew through Dallas the other day. Well, went to a conference down there, and I was stunned. This was in an affluent area, and you have people walking around in hijabs.
Burqas, yeah.
And burqas. And, I was just like, it wasn't just one, it was many.
Right.
And I'm going, what is going on to Dallas of all places? So, okay, well, what about this? Trump was also designated, or is saying he's going to designate, you clarify, I don't know, certain chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood in America as terrorist organizations. Ron DeSantis is moving in this similar direction, but is this positive? Is it not enough? What's going on here?
It's positive in this sense. It alerts the Americans, the American citizenry, that what is the Muslim Brotherhood, and maybe they're a problem. I just read an article today that was posted a week or so ago where different talking heads, like people that are former intelligence people, about is this a good or bad idea. The fact that people think it's a bad idea tells me where they lie. That the Muslim Brotherhood it's the underpinning, or the organization that underpins, Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, all their leaders.
Yeah.
Are Muslim brothers. And so one of the, when you look and people are like, there's no tie between the Muslim Brotherhood and violence. I'm like, you clearly haven't even read their doctrine. You read their bylaws and it's clear. But then, Hamas is an inherent part of the Muslim Brotherhood.
I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I read the other day that Muslim Brotherhood is the oldest and is sort of the parent organization or umbrella organization for all these terrorist groups, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Al-Qaeda, and all of them. And so it likes to stay behind or under the radar and act like it's sort of this peaceful religious association promoting civil rights for Muslims. But that's not right.
Correct. So the Muslim world is broken down into the Sunni and Shia world for simplicity's sake.
Catholic, Protestant.
The vast majority of the Muslim world are Sunni. Now, there are legal reasons and there are historical reasons for this split. But I just want to leave it on the table as that. Really, the Shia Islam makes up a very small percentage.
Okay.
That's Iran is completely a Shia nation. Iraq is 60+% Shia. And then you've got Bahrain and some other areas of the world where they're sprinkled around. The Muslim Brotherhood is a Sunni Muslim Brotherhood organization. So Hezbollah is an arm of the Iranian government, so that's different. But all the other ones you name, Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, Islamic Jihad, and hundreds of others, did grow out as a natural outgrowth of the Muslim Brotherhood. Yeah. Hamas is an inherent part of the Muslim Brotherhood, and even their own doctrine says they are the Palestinian wing of the Muslim Brotherhood. And that's in evidence in U.S. terrorism trials as well. But yes, the Muslim Brotherhood, and if you look at the attacks in the United States, the Boston Marathon bombing, where they were affiliated with the Islamic Society of Boston, Muslim Brotherhood, founded by the Al-Qaeda guy, al-Amoudi, that worked for Mr. Clinton, by the way. These are all investigative clues. And by the way, just as a sidebar, when the director of the FBI, Robert Mueller, was testifying before Congress after the Boston Marathon bombings and getting grilled for how this could have happened, he was asked by Louis Gohmert, congressman from Texas, did you know that the Al-Qaeda guy, al-Amoudi, founded that organization? And Mueller said, no, I did not know that. Wow. I mean, this is the level of just gross criminal negligence. Wow. So the point is, there are these, the 9/11 attacks had direct support from Muslim Brotherhood organizations. The Islamic Center of San Diego, the Darul Hijra Islamic Center and Falls Church, and other Muslim Brotherhood entities that we haven't even fully figured that out yet, 23 years later, 24 years later. The jihadi who killed the 4 Marines and the Navy sailor in Chattanooga, Islamic Society of Chattanooga supported him. That's a Muslim Brotherhood organization. So the idea that they're not violent is ridiculous. All you got to do is read their their creed.
All right, well, we're out of time, John. Unfortunately, got to have you back. Tell folks how they can learn more and get in touch with your organization.
So I'm at johnguandolo.com. I would encourage you to use the resources there. I think the most important thing, I'll go back to one of the very first questions, is what do we do? And I think this has to be solved at the local level. And so that's what I do, train citizens how to do this at the local level, identify and flush these entities out, communist and jihadi. I'm also on Twitter, jguandolo, 54271, but jguandolo, you'll find me.
Okay, well, I'm gonna expand the time just a little bit because I think people need to know more about this. What you do is you can go into a local community and do a training session for law enforcement, for public officials, for church leaders, or anybody who is interested in learning more. And in that, they get this knowledge that's just pouring out of you, but they also get trained on here's practical things you can do to help push back. Is that fair?
That's right. So we have multiple trainings. We do the one we do the most is a one-day program for citizens where we literally in a county. Sometimes we have 2 different counties worth of people, but and we will train them how to organize themselves as a team, how to identify communist and jihadi organizations in their county, and the goal is to lawfully flush these entities out and reestablish the Republican form of government at the county level, which is required under the Constitution.
Right.
And we're having great success with it. Concurrently with that, running a 3-day law enforcement program for National Guard, law enforcement, local officials. Just ran one right before Thanksgiving. And we had we had local officials, we had sheriffs, we had leadership, police agencies, investigators, state level, local. And of course, their heads explode when they realize how bad the threat is. And of course, you got people in the room from the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force who have never heard this information.
Oh my God.
So this is the level. But so those are the 2 primary, and then we also run training programs to train people to teach this information.
Awesome. Man, thanks for coming on Truth and Liberty. It's been just an unpleasant reminder of the reality and truth, but always great to see you. So
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Guys, tune in to the next Truth and Liberty episode. And if you haven't gone on our website yet and picked up your free copy of Andrew Wommack's booklet, How to Stay Positive in a Negative World. Boy, I need this right now after this interview, right? But how to stay positive in a negative world, do that. Just go to truthandlibertygtn.com today. And we appreciate your support. God bless all of you.